Hey, Pretty Girl Club. Welcome back to the Privilege Stacking series. If you're new here, welcome to the Pretty Girl Club. Don't forget to subscribe. But I want to talk more about pretty privilege and social climbing because I've noticed that there are a lot of girls who want to be treated a certain way. They want the princess treatment, or maybe they want to be viewed as beautiful, and they don't understand how to attain that. So, the first thing to remember is that there is nothing wrong with being viewed as pretty. There's nothing wrong with wanting to be perceived as pretty. I just think that you have to remember that privilege is given by other people. Everyone is giving or receiving a certain privilege at any given time. So, for example, if I'm shopping in the grocery store and there's a woman who has on nice shoes and I compliment her shoes, I just gave her pretty privilege by complimenting her. Anytime you follow a girl on Instagram or Pinterest or something like that, you are giving her pretty privilege because you are admitting publicly, I think your hair is pretty. I think your makeup is pretty. So I'm going to follow you so I can watch how you do your makeup so I can emulate the same thing. So there are many different types of pretty privilege. I think that one of the mistakes a lot of women make is they have this view where they feel like you can only be pretty if it comes to the male gaze, or maybe they're just focused on using their pretty privilege to attract a hypergamous marriage. And I mean, that's fine if that's what you want, but this channel focuses on the many different kinds of pretty privilege you can tap into. So I came across this comment on my channel, and this person says, I like how you talked about what kind of pretty do you want to be in order to attract the people you want to attract. Can you do a video about that? How do you make yourself pretty to attract friends or pretty to attract white men, black men? What's the difference? So, as far as making yourself pretty to attract friends, I've actually done this. Did you know that girls actually give other girls pretty privilege? Anytime you compliment someone, anytime you say to yourself, she's so cute, oh my gosh, I want to be friends with her, you're actually giving her pretty privilege. So I've noticed that for me personally, I tend to want pretty privileged friends because being around beautiful black women, that makes me feel more inspired. I like being around friends who are fashionable. So even when it comes down to pretty privilege, you can break it down into many different areas. Do you have pretty hair? Do you have pretty skin? Maybe you have a pretty face, a pretty body. The way that I've used pretty privilege to attract the type of friends I wanted is number one, determining what my friendship type is. One of my social climbing goals was to have a friend group. I didn't want to just have one friend and then, like, if she says she can't hang out, then I'm going to stay in the house all weekend. I didn't want that. So I knew that I wanted to have multiple girls that I could hang out with and go to bars or wherever. So I strategically made sure that I was representing myself in a way that is fashionable, classy, and bougie, because you guys know that's my type of friend. I want bougie friends. So that's actually one of the strategies that I used to attract the types of friends that I wanted, because if you want to be friends with me, one of the keys to being my friend is being nice. And a part of being nice is complimenting. So when it comes to my pretty privilege in terms of friendships, I try to express my beauty via my fashion. So anytime a girl compliments my outfit, I deeply appreciate that. I actually value compliments from other women more than compliments from men, because I've noticed that a lot of women are much more genuine in their compliments versus guys who just want to sleep with you or something. So if a girl compliments me and she says, oh, I love the way you did your nail art. Oh, I love how your earrings match your shoes and then your shoes match your purse. If a girl says that, that actually opens the door for me to want to be friends with her. So I actually curated my wardrobe and the way that I represent my beauty. I curated that so that I could attract other girls who appreciate the same thing. You know how some people say, oh, my friend was hating on my outfit, my friend was hating on my makeup. Well, that's a sign that, number one, the person is a hater, but also your social climbing strategy or your strategy of making friends, maybe need to change it, because the question is, why did that woman, like, how did she even get to the point to where she feels comfortable talking crap about your outfit? So I've noticed that part of how I make friends is by setting boundaries. So the way that I do it is, if my friends are not complimenting or they're not being encouraging towards me, they will get cut off. You know how some people say, "Oh, well, they just don't compliment, or they're not going to hype you up. You just want people to kiss your behind." Anytime people say that, that's really a gaslighting thing. They're only saying that because they don't want to encourage you, or maybe they come from a background where people didn't encourage them. So then they want to make you feel bad for only wanting to hang out with girls that hype you up. And it's like, no, I hype up my friends, so I would want my friends to hype me up. But another question that I asked myself is, what is my friendship archetype? How do I express my personality when it comes to friend groups? Am I the fun friend? Am I the friend that knows about all the events? That's something that you should ask yourself. How do you express yourself in friendships? Are you the one who plans the get togethers? Are you the friend who is like the really good wingman or wingwoman? Are you the friend who is the fashionista? Or maybe you're like the fitness friend? All of those things are part of social strategy. Like, I've actually asked myself that, like, what kind of friend am I? I've noticed that my strength as a friend is that I'm very encouraging. I noticed that I make a very good wing woman. So a lot of my friends, they want me to like go out with them, especially if I have introverted friends. So I'm an extrovert. But I notice a lot of introverted girls, they like hanging out with me because they say that I help them meet other people. So I've noticed that's another part of my friendship archetype, or kind of like the way that I express myself as a friend. So, you know how some women, they kind of say things like, "Oh, I don't have any friends," or "No one wants to be friends with me." Well, my question is, what kind of friend are you? Or like, how do you express your personality when it comes to others? So, in terms of using pretty privilege to attract friends, one of the questions that you can ask yourself is, how do I express my personality? So, I know my personality is very friendly and bright and kind of bubbly. So, I actually will wear bright colors. I will actually wear kind of like these neon colors, or kind of like eclectic. Well, I don't know if I would call it eclectic, but I wear like kawaii fashion sometimes, or different accessories that kind of make me stand out. And it helps me to attract fashionista friends. So that's an example of actually using quote unquote pretty privilege to attract friendships. A lot of people, they think that pretty privilege just means, oh, Hollywood thinks you're pretty, or you could be some sort of actress. And it's like, no, there are so many different kinds of beauty. You could have pretty fashion, like a nice way that you dress or something. That's still a form of pretty privilege, being a fashionista. I've also used my hair as a way to attract friendships. I know it sounds very random, but I like to style my hair in all of these different like hair pieces and stuff. And so I've actually attracted friends based on something as simple as my hairstyle, because I will be out somewhere like at a class or some sort of fitness group, and somebody will walk up to me and they'll be like, "Oh my gosh, I like your hair. How did you do your hair?" Next thing I know, I just made a new friend just based off of something as simple as my hair. So if you're one of those girls who really values having natural hair, and maybe you want to attract other naturalistas, you can start going to a yoga class, for example, and wearing your hair in a big afro. And then if there's another girl there that also has a big afro, you already have a conversation topic right there. I think that a big part of pretty privilege is when your beauty is the topic of conversation. Anytime someone brings up your appearance as a topic of conversation, you have pretty privilege, even if they are specifically bringing up your beauty in comparison to someone else's. Another way that you can actually use pretty privilege to attract girlfriends is by giving another girl pretty privilege and acknowledging her beauty. I actually love meeting other women and complimenting them on whether it's their natural hair or like their outfit, maybe if they're in shape. That's a really good way to make friends. It's by acknowledging someone else's pretty privilege. A lot of people don't understand that if you want certain things in life, you have to give as well. You can't just expect everybody to kind of like worship you, if that makes sense. You can't just walk into a room and expect everyone to want to be friends with you. Other people have different traumas too. Other people have dealt with jealousy as well. So if somebody doesn't even know who you are, sometimes they might be guarded. I know that a lot of you guys can relate to that, especially having women who are kind of like haters or they want to take the life that you have. So, giving someone else their pretty privilege, giving them their exotical tax, that's actually another way that you're technically using the concept of pretty privilege to attract the friends that you want. Another question that you can ask yourself is, what aspects of my beauty do I want my friends to acknowledge? What aspects of my beauty do I want my friends to appreciate? Like, do you care about your friends complimenting your nail art? Do you care about your friends complimenting your fashion sense, your workout routine? Like, I've noticed for me, I personally care a lot about my fashion. I've noticed that that's like one of the biggest compliments you can give me. If you compliment my outfit or my hair, we're going to be friends. And one of the ways that you know what type of pretty privilege you care about amongst women is think about the friend that you've been jealous of in the past. Have you ever been envious of a certain woman in the girl group? Maybe she's the one where everybody compliments her makeup and they don't compliment yours. Maybe they talk about her getting a lot of attention because her body is nice or something. Maybe she's like the fitness friend and that's the kind of pretty privilege she has. She has pretty body privilege. Maybe she's the natural hair expert. She's kind of like the hairstylist of the friend group. So that is actually going to point you in the direction of the kind of pretty privilege you want to have in your friend group. I am a firm believer of only going where you are celebrated. This is not just something that you should use with men. I think that you should use this even in your friend group. So, you know how some people say, oh, that's self centered. Why do you need people to compliment you? Well, because that's what being celebrated means. Being celebrated means being complimented. Did you know that anytime someone uses that phrase pedestal, like they're putting you on a pedestal, you just want to be pedestalized? You do know that being pedestalized, that really just means being complimented, right? So just keep that in mind. Anytime someone complains about not being pedestalized, exchange the word pedestalize with the word complimented, and then you'll see what they really desire. So that's another thing that I had to learn. There's nothing wrong with me wanting my friends to compliment certain aspects of my beauty. I want my friends to notice if I have a cute outfit on, or, if I have on some nice shoes, just whatever it is. So you can ask yourself, what type of friend have I been jealous of in the group? Have I ever been jealous of my friend's fashion sense? Have I ever been jealous of my friend's hairstyles? I've noticed this sounds really silly, but when I was a teenager, there was this one girl in my friend group, and she had naturally short hair, and she had like one of those short hairstyles with the perm, but she was really good at extensions. She was so good at like wigs, weaves, half wigs. I mean, she would go from short hair to long hair to brown. And I noticed that my other friend, like one of my best friends at the time, she would always compliment this other girl's hair. And I actually found myself getting like a little bit jealous at the time because I was thinking, wait, what? Like, I want my friends to think my hair is cool. And it may sound very immature, but it's easier to just be honest with yourself and to realize, wait a minute, okay, so I care about being the one that has cute hairstyles. I care about being the one that knows how to slay my extensions. So instead of me being jealous of this other friend who's good at slaying her extensions, instead of me hating on her hair colors, why don't I simply learn how to do my own hair colors and just prioritize being around friends where they appreciate different hair colors? And then we can talk about it together. We can talk about the different extensions we're doing. We can share. Did you know that I actually made friends after that? I made a new group of friends where all of us wear different extensions. So all of us, literally, we have a group chat. We share pictures of like all the different clip-ins that we're using. Like we share pictures of the different ponytails that we're buying and stuff. So simply admitting to yourself what you want and kind of satisfying your inner child, because everyone has an inner child, by the way. So I've noticed that some people have kind of over spiritualized their desires and they think that it's stupid to care about hairstyles. And that's what I used to think too, in terms of pretty privilege. I thought at the time, like, that's very stupid. Like, why should I care about my friends appreciating my hairstyles? Why do I care about my friends being fashionistas? Well, you know what? That's one of my heart's desires, okay? That's okay. It's okay that deep down in my heart, I really want fashionista friends or friends who appreciate my fashion where we can talk about it together. Fashion and hairstyles are still under the umbrella of pretty privilege because your hair is an accessory and your fashion is an accessory as well. And I feel like it's easier to just admit what I want rather than to hate on someone else. So that's another thing you can ask yourself, what aspect of my beauty would I love for my friends to compliment? And this is for those of you who maybe you don't have friends or maybe you are kind of deciding what types of friends you want. Another way that you can learn how to use your pretty privilege to make girlfriends is by asking yourself, what is my favorite compliment about my beauty that I love receiving from other women? Like I said, for me, it's my hairstyles, whether it's my real hair or fake hair, and it's also my fashion. For other girls, maybe it's their makeup that they really enjoy being complimented on, and they've always wanted friends that encourage their makeup expression. Like, another strategy for using pretty privilege to attract girlfriends is getting around girls who also value beauty. So that's why I say that I think pretty girls should try to be friends with other pretty girls, or if you're pretty, you can acknowledge another girl's beauty. And also, you know how some people say you reap what you sow? Okay, so if I want to be praised and complimented for my hairstyles and my fashion, guess what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna single out whatever girl in the fitness class has a cute hairstyle or a cute outfit, and I'm going to compliment her. And it's more likely that she's going to compliment me as well because we both value the same things. We both value the beauty and the pretty hairstyles. We both value pretty outfits. That is the key to having a better friendship experience. I know that a lot of the girls on here have a lot of traumas when it comes to friends. I've noticed the same thing as well, but the way that I kind of healed it was just by psychoanalyzing myself and looking at what I've been envious of in the past. So if I'm envious of my friend who has like cute hairstyles or something, or I really want to have a friend group where they care about hairstyles and they compliment my hairstyles, then that's what I'm going to do. So the next part of the question was, so they said, how do you make yourself pretty to attract friends or pretty to attract white men or black men? So with white men, when it comes to the male gaze in general, I believe that you can break down the male gaze into multiple parts. Hold on, let me take out my notes because I have notes on this. Okay, so with the male gaze, I came up with a little list. There is the social media male gaze. So let's say you care about the white male gaze. Okay, so do you want the white male gaze from social media, such as likes, followers? There's also the dating marketplace male gaze. So this ties into dating apps or being asked out on a date. So I believe that you can actually break down the male gaze into two categories. There's the male gaze from a distance, which is just the social media likes. Basically, you're not meeting him in person, or maybe you only meet him once or twice. And then there's the male gaze up close. So this is relationships, boyfriend, girlfriend, I don't know, friends with benefits, or sex, like you're having sex or something, or marriage. So the first thing, let's say you want the white male gaze, you want pretty privilege with white men, you have to ask yourself, okay, do I want the white male gaze from a distance? So social media only? Or do I want the white male gaze in terms of relationships? Same thing with the black male gaze. Do you care about black guys liking your pics on IG, or do you want an actual relationship? Another thing when it comes to the male gaze is if you want the up close male gaze, like their relationship, you have to remember that guy, he will see you in your natural state. Okay, so he's going to see every part of your body because this is up close and personal. for the male gaze. So he will see every part of your body if you're like sleeping with him, or if you're trying to like live with him one day or something. So that's something to remember. I've noticed a lot of girls, they don't think through their social strategies. So let's say you want some guy to like you or something, but then you forgot that if you do get in a relationship with that guy, he's going to eventually see your natural hair, your face without makeup, I don't know, you with no clothes. So that's something to think about. It's something to strategize on. And by the way, I'm not shaming either one. Um, this channel is more of a decentering men channel. So when it comes to the male gaze, I tend to focus more so on the male gaze from a distance. But if you care about making yourself pretty, that's the first question you want to ask yourself. Okay, what type of male gaze do I want? From a distance, social media, likes, followers, or do I want the up close? Because if it's from a distance, that's very easy. You can just, post certain pictures on IG, whatever pictures are the most popular. You can kind of emulate whoever the biggest influencers are. So I can't really think of any Instagram influencers or social media influencers that are popular in the white male gaze, but that is a place to start. Or same thing with the black male gaze as well. You would want to look at the popular beauty standard within that community. So what's the most popular beauty standard in the white community? What is the most popular beauty standard in the black community? I've noticed another social strategy mistake that a lot of women make is trying to change other people's beauty standards. You cannot control what somebody else thinks is pretty. So that's something else you have to accept. Anytime you're doing something, whether it's male centered, friendship centered, anytime you're doing something that's not self centered, you have to remember that you cannot change them. So in the case of me wanting friendships where the girls compliment my hair, if a certain girl, if she just doesn't care about hairstyling and if she doesn't care about fashion, I cannot bully her into caring about fashion. I can't bully her into caring about hairstyles. And the same thing goes with the male gaze. You cannot police somebody into preferring you. I cannot police a white guy, black guy, Indian guy into liking me specifically. So that's another thing to remember when it comes to the privilege conversation, because other people are the ones who are giving you the privilege. Remember that. Other people are giving you the privilege. Other people are picking you and they are bestowing the privilege upon you. So there is kind of this pick me aspect of the privilege conversation. So never forget that. I feel like when it comes to being a quote unquote pick me, whether you're a pick me for friends, everybody's a pick me for something, okay? You're either a pick me for money, you're a pick me for men, you're a pick me for social status. So never forget that. Another part of this question was, what's the difference? So she was asking, what's the difference between like pretty privilege with white men versus pretty privilege with black men? The difference is culture. Okay, so culturally, the white community will have a different standard of what they view as being classically pretty. And by the way, I'm not saying that you cannot have pretty privilege in these communities. That's not what I'm saying at all. In fact, you can utilize tokenism to your advantage. So, for example, I did this my entire life actually during my adolescence. When I was the only person of color in an all white environment, I used tokenism to get a modeling contract. I used tokenism to do so many things, like to get noticed. So I'm not saying that you can't have pretty privilege, but using tokenism, that's more so using exotic privilege, for lack of better words. You're kind of using exotic privilege to increase your pretty privilege. So this is something where a lot of divestors will talk about. They'll say, I have dark skin and 4C hair, so I'm going to be a preference. I wouldn't call it being a preference. I would just call that a form of exotic privilege. So anybody who is non-white, for example, if you are perceived as pretty and you are non-white in a white environment, then your exotic appearance in that community is contributing to the pretty privilege. So the same thing goes for in the black community. Let's say you are, I don't know, half Asian or something, you're Hawaiian, I don't know, you have some sort of different background. It's actually the exoticism that is contributing to your pretty privilege. So the difference between like a white pretty privilege versus black pretty privilege is just culture. And when I use that term culture, look at the history of what that particular racial group has viewed as beautiful. So, historically, what has the white community viewed as beautiful? I'm thinking of blonde hair and blue eyes. I'm thinking of very thin women. I'm thinking of Megan Fox. I'm thinking of Taylor Swift. That's what I'm thinking when I think of the classic version of pretty privilege in the white community. In the black community, it's going to be something different. In the Arab community, it will be something different. This is why I tell women stop focusing on being the preference, because pretty privilege is actually not a competition. And that's because being pretty is not a monolith. Also, you can break it down even further with the male gaze. So, for example, let's look at the white community. Let's say you want to attract the white male gaze. Okay, what kind of white male? White people are not a monolith. What kind of black male? Black men are not a monolith. Do you want a Eurocentric white male? Because if so, he's going to have more of a kind of a Taylor Swift, that sort of, he may view that as being pretty privileged just because he's Eurocentric. Do you want an Afrocentric white man? Those guys exist. Some people call them wanksters or wiggas. Okay, that's an Afrocentric white man. Do you want a male gaze from a low socioeconomic status? So this is a white guy, maybe from a trailer park, from the hood. Or do you want the affluent white male gaze? All of these things are different forms of social status. They're different forms of social class. So even when it comes to the white male gaze specifically, just start breaking it down from there. You can ask yourself, okay, what kind of white male gaze? The male gaze from a distance, the male gaze up close. If I were to use the Asian community as an example, or like maybe some sort of Asian guy that was interested in me, I understand that in the Asian community, they tend to have straighter hair than mine. My hair is a type 3. The average person in the Asian community does not have type 3 hair. So, one question I had to ask myself is, am I willing to maybe keep my hair straight in order to kind of navigate my way through the Asian community? How does that make me feel psychologically? Do I feel okay with doing that? Do I not feel okay? There is no wrong answer. But for some women, depending on how they feel about their hair texture and their beauty, they don't want to morph themselves. For some women, it's important for them to be perceived as beautiful in their natural state. But I think, unfortunately, when it comes to the preference conversation, you're giving all of the power to the beholder. You know how they say beauty is in the eye of the beholder? You're giving all of the power to the man. This is why I say, if you're going to do this whole social climbing thing, I think it's easier to decenter men while doing it. Like, don't center the guy's opinions of you and like let him crush your self-esteem. So, for example, in the past with dating guys that were not men of color, like dating a white guy, I'm not offended if a white guy says, "Oh, blonde hair looks pretty." You know how some women, they get offended if a guy says, "Oh, I like this other hair color. I like this other body type." You can't be the type that really gets offended if you're navigating in other cultures, because different cultures have different trends. They have different beauty trends, they have different popular beauty standards. And by the way, all of the cultural things I'm talking about right now, all of those are just based on Hollywood. That's it. So that's actually another question you can ask yourself. What kind of pretty privilege do I want when it comes to the male gaze? Do I want him to view me kind of like how white men would view Beyonce, for example? So kind of meeting this Hollywood beauty standard, because I noticed that's something that I am influenced by, and I'm willing to be honest with myself about what influences my internalized beauty standard. So I've noticed I'm influenced by Hollywood and what's popular. I'm also influenced by social media beauty standards. I've noticed I am influenced by the male gaze beauty standards, more so from a distance though. So that's something else you can ask yourself if you're social climbing. Who influences my perceptions of pretty privilege? What type of pretty privilege is the strongest, in my opinion? What type of pretty privilege will help me social climb the highest? Who gives that pretty privilege? Because remember, privilege is always given to you by others. It's always, always, always going to be external. And that's something you have to accept. For some people, they don't want to accept that. They don't want anybody else to have the power. So they'll just be like, you know what? F the privilege conversation. I don't care about privilege, and that's okay. So that's another thing to remember though. Anytime it comes to privilege, other people are actually the ones giving you the privilege. This is why I've made videos where I say stuff like, hey, is your personality hindering your privilege? Whether it's pretty privilege, it could be intelligence privilege, creativity privilege at work, because other people are always the ones who are giving it. If you want to social climb, remember the first word in there is social, meaning you're interacting with society. Society just means people. You're interacting with people. Privilege has to do with other people. Others give you the privilege. So that's another thing I've had to accept. Like, hey, other people are the ones who are giving the compliments. Other people are the ones who are giving the opportunities. Your opportunities come from others. Your compliments come from others. Your Instagram likes come from others. So that's another thing you have to be careful with and remember. It's all external. This is why I always say, please do not center everything, don't center your whole self esteem around men or around the whole privilege conversation because it's external. So you want to have an internalized beauty standard. And then with pretty privilege is more so about the externalized beauty standard or your experience with the external environment. And this is also why I say that privilege stacking is really the best option. So instead of just using pretty privilege, let's say you want the male gaze up close, you want a relationship. Let's pretend you want a relationship with like a Hispanic man. I don't know. I'm just making stuff up. The question was, how do you make yourself pretty to attract friends or attract white men, black men? Let's pretend it's Hispanic men. Okay, you can make yourself pretty in terms of Hollywood so that this guy from this other culture is familiar with your phenotype. You can do that if you want. Or you can stay in your natural state and you can use other privileges as well, such as your charm, your intelligence, maybe your exotic privilege. By the way, if you're in some sort of interracial environment or a multicultural environment, exotic privilege goes very far. Having a fluid identity goes very far. So maybe you can speak Spanish and that makes you more attractive. Those are all things to think about. Anyway, what do you ladies think? Let me know in the comment section and I'll talk to you next time. Stay pretty, ladies.